Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a leader who attached utmost priority on fundamental values, values such as freedom, democracy, human rights, and rule of law. And for Prime Minister Abe, India shares all these fundamental values. So for him, India was and is a natural partner. So as early as 20 years back, when he wrote a book entitled Towards a Beautiful Nation, there is a chapter on Asia, and he specifically refers to India as sharing those fundamental values. So he says, we should create this special partnership with India, and on that basis, we can add the United States, because the United States is Japan's only ally, and then Australia too, because Australia also shares these fundamental values. So this is my take on why India, because Prime Minister Abe had the conviction that two greatest democracies in Asia, India and Japan, must take the leading role in preserving peace and prosperity of the region and of the world. So for him, India was the natural partner, special partner.
How Shinzo Abe took an interest in two places in India, the Northeast as well as the Andaman Islands. And that was because of the role of the Indian National Army and Netaji, Subhash Chandra Bose, at the time. And before he died, he had actually written out his speech. He planned to go to Manipur, where Japanese soldiers had been killed. Now, this is all part of a controversial history for India as well, because, of course, India was on the other side during the war. But I think it is a credit to both Kishi and to Shinzo Abe that they have been able to put aside the obvious political differences that Japan and India perhaps should have had, and instead made it a personal connection. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about how Nobusuke Kishi's plans, long before Xi Jinping in 2013 or 2014 talked about Asia for Asians, Nobusuke Kishi spoke about Asian development for Asians. And Japan, despite at that time being a small economy in the 50s, had started the ODA, Overseas Development Assistance. And no country, because of the political reasons, because of the war, and because, nobody saw Japan as this big power at the time, nobody really wanted to accept financial assistance. And Panditji decided to accept that financial assistance. Of course, today, somebody referred to how Japan is in every part of our lives. All of you take the Delhi Metro, for example, to come here. But at that time, that little, I think the assistance was some 24 crores for projects. That assistance meant a lot, not just for the person who received it, but for the person who gave it, because it gave an acceptance, it gave a respect. And I think those are some of the parts that Abe imbibed from his grandfather. Of course, as you said, ties with the US. Abe's grandfather was responsible for the security treaty. And in the book that Ambassador Suzuki mentions, Towards a Beautiful Country, Abe writes about an emotional moment for him when in school, his teacher actually challenged him and said, we should never have had this security treaty with the United States. And Abe countered that. It was a driving desire, obviously, for him in his political career to somehow not just exonerate his grandfather, but to give him the rightful place. I'd finally like to say in a lot of what I read was that Abe's relationship with India was twofold. One part of it was to build the Japan-India relationship, to make it perhaps in one day a household name. And Towards a Beautiful Country, he says, if we play our cards right, in a decade, so he wrote this in 2007, he said in a decade, the Japan-India relationship could actually be stronger than the Japan-US or Japan-China relationship. Of course, he wrote this in 2007. I wouldn't say that that has been achieved. But what I will say is it was clear that he was committed to that. He also was very committed he believed in India, not just in the relationship, he believed in India's role on the global stage. And that's why when he introduced his idea of the confluence of the two seas, which brings with it not just the confluence of the Indo-Pacific, but it brings with it the ideas of the international rule of law, the confluence of democracies in a sense, the importance of democracy in both countries. He chose to do it in the Indian Parliament in 2008. I don't think you can get more symbolism to why, when the question you asked was why India, than to what Abe chose to do each time when it was with India, whether it was with Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, and then the very close bond he developed with Prime Minister Modi. And he said one was my mentor and the other was my closest friend. You know, so I think we stand to lose if we forget any part of this legacy, because it means something not just to Japan and to India, but to our position in the world.
I had been following this UN Security Council reform for many years. And it is very clear that Abe-sama was heavily invested in the G4, the group of 4 countries, Germany, Japan, India, and Brazil, getting to be permanent members of the UN Security Council. You're all aware of this, I hope. So he pushed for the G4 summit in 2015. And that came out with a substantive outcome document showing the way forward for intergovernmental negotiations. And of course, it has been an uphill task, particularly because I think China is not so keen. And but at some points, I remember there were even agreements between Japan and China that China will not oppose and things like that. But of course, we have that challenge. But we are very soon, I'm told, going to see some fruit of all that Abe-sama did and what India has been working to do with Japan in the Summit of the Future, which is going to take place in September in the UN General Assembly this year. So these are some of the, so overall, what I would say is that Abe-sama was someone who, as he thought he would, who took Japan, raised Japan's stature and status in the world, and at the same time, I think, did the world much good, and particularly India-Japan relations, he took to a whole new level. And I do hope that his successors, the legacy that he leaves behind in this area, that his successors will continue to take this forward. And you know, there is a lot of unfinished business in all of the areas. And I particularly am, you know, very much looking forward to the FDI investment. You know, there's much that has happened, but it can happen more. And also trade, these two aspects going up. There's nuclear cooperation, there's military to military cooperation. All these breakthroughs have happened, and it's unimaginable. It would have been unimaginable without Abe-sama.
Quad is one of those visions. He started his endeavors to establish Quad when he became the first prime minister, the first time in 2006. But it was a short-lived premiership, and as soon as he stepped down, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd of Australia said, okay, Australia is quitting this undertaking to see if we can create Quad. Now, he never gave up. So just before he officially became the prime minister, he wrote an article as a member of the parliament, which was distributed through Diamond Syndicate, And he argued for creating a security diamond: Japan, India, US, and Australia. And this is essentially Quad. So as soon as he started his second administration, he directed me to revive his major drive to establish Quad. So we started at the Director General level, and at the same time, whenever we had a chance for a bilateral summit meeting, either with Prime Minister Modi or Prime Minister of the US President, we tried also to have trilats, Japan, India, US, or Japan, India, Australia, which led us to the Quad eventually. But first we had DG level, and then we went on to the foreign ministers level, and finally the Quad. So you know the rest of the story. We had already 3 Quad summits, and this year India is going to host the Quad summit. So this is one of the ideals and visions he held dear, that one of the reasons he wanted to come back. So, and he's no longer with us, but his visions still live on. So I think that's something that each one of us should become a torchbearer for his vision and carry forward into the future. Why is India so special? I started with sharing fundamental values, but sharing common strategic interests is another major pillar. Seen from Prime Minister Abe, he saw India as special partner for 2 reasons. One is values, the other is strategic interests. And hence, India for him was so special. When Prime Minister Modi visited Japan in 2018, Prime Minister Abe invited Prime Minister Modi to his personal cottage at the Mount of Fuji near Lake Kawaguchi. And they had a one-on-one dinner. So soon afterwards, a number of embassies quietly approached to me saying, can my Prime Minister also get invited to Abe-san's cottage? Prime Minister Abe's answer was always immediate and clear. No, because that place is specifically reserved to Prime Minister Modi. So this is a testament to what kind of special friendship he enjoyed with Prime Minister Modi. Of course, this is personal, but this is underpinned by the special global strategic partnership that Japan and India enjoy. And this is not just for mutual benefits, but this is for the region and for the world. Really, Prime Minister Abe was really convinced that Japan and India must take on the leadership role in preserving the peace and prosperity of the Indo-Pacific and the world, because we shared strategic common interests and we shared fundamental values. And for him, rule of law was so important.